We look upon the great coniferous forests of North America, the green oceans that cover a continent, and we see permanence. We see an empire of stone and wood that has stood for millennia, a silent, unmoving cathedral. The Rocky Mountains, the Cascades, the Sierra Nevada. These are landscapes of eternity, sculpted by ice and time. The air is sharp with the scent of pine and fir, a resinous incense offered by trees that were seedlings when our own civilizations were just emerging. This is a world of titans, of lodgepole and ponderosa pines, sentinels that scrape the sky, their dominance seemingly absolute. It is a map we believe to be fixed, a green mantle that feels eternal. But this is a grand illusion. Beneath this veneer of stillness, a force is at work. It is not a volcano, nor a glacier, nor an earthquake. It is something smaller, infinitely smaller. It is a speck of chitin, a creature the size of a single grain of rice. Dendroctonus ponderosae, the mountain pine beetle. Its very name in Greek means tree killer. We see it as a pest, a nuisance, a biological footnote in a story about giant trees. We have dismissed it, overlooked it, and waged chemical war against it. But this is a failure of scale, a failure of imagination. What if we told you that this tiny insect is not a pest, but a regulator? What if this mote of dust is, in fact, an engineer of entire ecosystems, a force that operates on a geological timescale, culling the weak, testing the strong, and rewriting the very blueprint of the forest? What if this beetle is an architect of fire and renewal, a keystone species that dictates which forests live and which forests must die? For millennia, this engineer has maintained a delicate, brutal balance, a cycle of life and death moderated by the one force it truly fears, the deep, cleansing cold of winter. But what happens when that cold no longer comes? What happens when a new, invisible engineer, our own warming atmosphere, removes the brakes from this ancient system? The tiny, overlooked creature is about to be handed a terrible, unprecedented power, and the map we thought was permanent is about to be erased and redrawn, not with ice, but with a tide of dying trees. The story of a true ecosystem engineer begins not with a roar, but with a whisper. A single female beetle, driven by an ancient imperative, lands on the bark of a mature lodgepole pine. She is a scout, a pioneer. She begins to chew, boring a tunnel into the phloem, the life-giving inner bark that is the tree's circulatory system. This is a fortress. The tree is not a passive victim. It is a giant, living entity with defenses honed over millions of years. Its first line of defense is its blood, resin. The tree floods the entry tunnel with a thick, toxic, suffocating wave of pitch, a golden amber that entombs invaders. In a normal year, for a healthy tree, this is the end of the story. The scout is pitched out, a tiny casualty in an ancient war. But this is no longer a normal year. As the female beetle bores, she releases a chemical signal, an aggregation pheromone. It is a chemical flare, a call to arms that rides the forest breeze. "This tree is vulnerable," it screams. "The defenses are strong, but they can be broken. Attack, attack now." And they come, not 1 or 10, but thousands. The air begins to hum. A swarm descends upon the single towering pine. It is a blitzkrieg, a coordinated, overwhelming mass attack. The beetles pour into every crack and crevice. The tree fights back. It bleeds resin from 1,000 wounds, its bark weeping golden tears. It is a valiant, desperate defense. But the sheer number of attackers is too great. For every beetle drowned in pitch, 2 more take its place. The tree's immune system, its reserves of resin, begins to fail. It is being bled dry. But the beetles do not come alone. They carry a passenger, a hidden, insidious weapon. In specialized pouches on their bodies called mycangia, they carry the spores of a fungus. We call it the blue stain fungus, Ophiostoma. As the beetles chew their galleries, they introduce this fungus deep into the tree's vascular system. This is the true assassin. The fungus explodes through the xylem and phloem, a silent, microscopic invasion. It is a biological warfare agent that clogs the tree's arteries, blocking the flow of water from the roots to the needles and the flow of sugars from the needles to the roots. The tree is now fighting a two-front war. As forest pathologist Dr. Elena Ramirez might describe it, the organism is being overwhelmed at the gate by the beetles, while simultaneously being strangled from within by the fungus. It is a catastrophic systemic failure. The tree is, in effect, dying of thirst and starvation at the same time. The battle, which raged for days, is lost. The needles, once a vibrant green, begin to fade, first to a pale chartreuse, then to a sickly yellow, and then, in a final defiant gasp, they turn a deep, rusty red. It is a flag of surrender, a red tide washing over the mountainside. This single red tree is a tombstone, but it is not alone. All around it, its neighbors, also under attack, are turning. What was one red tree becomes a dozen, then 100, then 1,000. Within a single season, a patch of green forest becomes a graveyard of red. The scale is staggering. We are not watching the death of trees. We are watching the death of an entire forest. The cascade has begun. The wind that once sighed through living needles now whistles through a dry, brittle skeleton. The sound of the forest has changed. The deep, damp silence is gone, replaced by the incessant, dry tapping of woodpeckers. This is the first immediate consequence, the first ripple in the pond. Opportunists arrive. The black-backed woodpecker, a fire specialist, floods the new red forest. It does not need to wait for fire. The beetle epidemic is a buffet. It hammers the bark, feasting on the millions of beetle larvae, its population exploding in this new, temporary paradise. The ecosystem is already beginning to retool itself. Shade-loving plants on the forest floor, deprived of the canopy's shade, but now also starved of the water the dying trees can no longer pump, begin to wither. The fungi that had symbiotic relationships with the pine roots, the mycorrhizal network, begins to starve. The underground internet of the forest is going dark. But the most profound change is what the beetle has prepared the forest for. This red forest is not just dead. It is cured. It is a tinderbox. Every tree is a perfectly prepared piece of kindling, a vertical torch, waiting. The beetle has not just killed the trees. It has set the stage for the next, far more dramatic act of engineering. It has primed the landscape for fire. We return to the same mountainside. 5 years later, the red tide has faded. The needles have fallen, carpeting the forest floor in a thick, dry mat. The trees are now skeletons. A gray forest, a silent, haunted landscape of snags. The woodpeckers have moved on, their food source exhausted. The air is still, heavy with an expectant silence. And then it comes. A bolt of lightning from a summer storm, or a spark from a human campfire. It touches the dry tinder. The forest does not just burn, it explodes. This is not the kind of fire the ecosystem evolved with. Normally, low-intensity ground fires would creep through the underbrush, clearing out debris, scarring, but sparing the thick-barked mature trees. But the beetle has engineered a different kind of fire. The flames do not creep, they climb. They race up the dead trees, using the dry, resinous wood as a ladder, and ignite the vast canopy of dead needles. This is a crown fire, an inferno, a firestorm that creates its own weather. It moves not in acres per hour, but in miles per minute. The heat is unimaginable, hot enough to vaporize the soil. to kill the seed banks buried deep in the earth, to turn granite boulders into shattered fragments. This is the beetle's true power. It does not just build dams or nests. It engineers conflagrations. It is a force of geology, a fire engineer that uses a biological trigger to unleash a physical catastrophe. When the smoke clears, the landscape is unrecognizable. It is not a forest. It is a moonscape, a world of black and ash. Where stood a dense, dark ocean of pine, there is now openness. Sunlight, which has not touched this soil directly in a century, floods the valley. It appears to be an apocalypse, the end of a world. But in nature, every end is a beginning. The new reality begins to assert itself. The first winners emerge from the ashes. The lodgepole pine, the beetle's primary victim, has one last trick. Many of its cones are serotinous, meaning they are sealed shut with a hard resin and will only open to release their seeds in the presence of intense heat. The beetle-fueled fire is precisely the key that unlocks this next generation. A rain of new seeds falls onto the nutrient-rich ash. But in many places, the fire was too hot. It was a sterilizing fire, killing even the serotinous cones. Here, the victory does not go to the pine. It goes to a different engineer, the aspen. While the pines were annihilated, the aspen's true life force was safe, hidden underground in its sprawling, interconnected root system. Now, released from the shade of the pines and stimulated by the fire, these roots erupt. A single aspen clone can send up thousands of new, bright green shoots. What was a dark, monotonous monoculture of pine becomes a shimmering, sun-drenched grove of aspen. This is the great ecological irony. The beetle, in its destruction of the pine empire, has broken its monopoly. It has forced a reset. It has not destroyed life. It has unleashed diversity. The winners and losers are clear. Losers, the old-growth specialists. The pine squirrels, who relied on the cones. The grizzly bears, for whom pine nuts were a critical late-season food source, are now forced to find new sustenance. The shade-loving mosses and fungi simply gone. Winners, the lovers of the open. The grasses, the wildflowers, the berry bushes erupt on the open, sunlit floor. This new vegetation supports a different community. The populations of elk, mule deer, and moose, the great browsers, explode in this new paradise of accessible food. The beetle, in killing the forest, has created a savanna. It has changed the hydrology too. Without a dense canopy of trees to intercept and transpire water, the spring snowmelt runs off the mountains in a sudden, violent pulse, scouring streams. The beetle has not only redesigned the forest, it has redesigned the rivers. Now, contrast this violent, dynamic world with one without the beetle, a world, perhaps, that we tried to create. For a century, we have practiced fire suppression. We have waged war on the beetle with pesticides. We attempted to freeze the forest in time, to make it a permanent museum. The result? We inadvertently became the beetle's greatest ally. By suppressing the natural, low-level fires, we allowed the forests to become unnaturally dense, unnaturally old, and full of stressed trees, a single, continuous, perfect buffet for the beetle. And then, we added the final ingredient, climate change. The winters grew milder. The deep cold that once killed 99% of the beetle larvae in their chambers no longer arrived. The beetle, which once had a single generation per year, now in the warmer conditions can have 2 or even 3. Its population is no longer in the millions, it is in the billions. We removed the brakes, we supplied the fuel, we supercharged the engineer. The result is what we see today, not a small localized outbreak, but a red tide that stretches from Mexico to Alaska. an epidemic of unprecedented scale. The new reality is that the ancient cycle is broken. The beetle is not just culling the weak. It is now, with our help, killing vast, healthy forests. The engineer is running rampant, and the ecosystem cannot keep up. We stand in the ashes of a world, sculpted by a creature we cannot even see without looking closely. A simple insect, the size of a grain of rice, a chemical signal, a fungal partner, a red tide of death, a grey tide of ghosts, a cleansing, sterilizing fire, and from the ashes, a new world. We call this an infestation. We call it a plague, a disaster. We stand in the ghost forests and see only destruction. We are waging a war against a tiny insect, trying to save our forests. But this raises a profound question. Are we fighting a pest, or are we fighting change? Are we fighting a natural process that we ourselves have pushed into overdrive? This tiny engineer, magnified by our own actions, is forcing the landscape to adapt to the new, warmer world that we have created. It is the agent of a transition we refuse to accept. What does this teach us about the nature of power? We see engineering in the beaver's dam, in the termite's mound, in our own concrete cities. But perhaps the most profound engineering is this: the chemical, biological trigger that can fell an empire of trees. The beetle does not plan. It does not think. It is a biological algorithm, an ancient force of nature, written in the language of evolution and survival. It reveals a truth we often choose to ignore. The world we see is not a finished painting. It is a canvas in constant, violent motion. The forests of our ancestors are gone. The forests of our children have not yet been born. And the architects of that new world are not just us. They are the small, the overlooked, the dismissed, the grain of rice-sized engineers who hold the power to fell empires and grow new ones from the ashes.